They looked like the American dream on wheels, but these cars were more nightmare than road trip. Packed with deadly flaws, they didn't just break down, they broke lives. Buckle up, because these 12 deadly machines are shockingly real and seriously terrifying. 1. The 1960 to 1964 Ford Falcon, the folding death trap. The 1960 Ford Falcon, or as some called it with a wink, the Falconer's mistake, was the poster child for cutting corners. On paper, it looked perfect, small, efficient, family-friendly, but in real life, it was about as safe as sitting on a lawn chair in a hurricane. The body panels were so thin you could almost read a newspaper through them, and the doors rattled like a tin toy. Crash it, and the front end could fold up like an accordion, with the suspension collapsing and the wheels jamming into the firewall. The steering column? Bent like a soggy pretzel. Its front suspension was infamous for failing suddenly during something as simple as hitting a pothole or braking hard, making the wheels tuck under like a scared turtle. Seatbelts were optional and mostly ignored because safety wasn't on Ford's priority list back then. 2. The 1956 Buick Century, the gentleman's cannonball. The 1956 Buick Century was basically the smooth-talking bad boy of the car world, looking all fancy with its shiny chrome, but underneath it was a wild cannonball on wheels. It had this massive 322 cubic inch V8 engine that pushed out 255 horsepower, which was like strapping a rocket to your grandma's ride. It could hit 100 miles per hour, which sounds cool until you realize the brakes were a total joke. Imagine pressing the brake pedal and it going all soft and mushy like a failed souffle, while you're smelling burnt asbestos and thinking, oh great, this is fine. The steering? Slow, lazy, and about as responsive as a sloth on a Sunday morning. And if you crashed, that fancy metal dashboard turned into a pinball machine of flying chrome knobs ready to poke you in places you didn't want poked. Pure chaos and style. 3. The 1970 to 1972 Oldsmobile Toronado, the front-drive freight train. The 1970 to 72 Oldsmobile Toronado was like GM's wild science experiment, slapping a monster 455 cubic inch V8 up front and saying, let's see what happens when muscle meets front-wheel drive. Spoiler, it wasn't pretty. The engine churned out over 370 horsepower, enough to make the Earth spin a little faster, but sending all that power to the front wheels gave the car a serious attitude problem. Hit the gas, and the steering wheel jerked around like it had a mind of its own, like it was auditioning for a horror flick. The front tires? They basically waved the white flag and lost grip all too often. Then came the brakes. Step on them hard, and the Toronado's nose would dive like it just saw its math test grades, while the tail tried to fly off. Handling? Let's just say it was a rough ride from a car that had 5 years of development. 4. The 1978 to 1981 Mercury Zephyr, the Invisible Death. The 1978 to 1981 Mercury Zephyr was the car equivalent of that quiet neighbor who looks harmless but secretly throws wild parties no one wants to attend. It sat there all boxy and plain, blending in perfectly with the suburban wallpaper. But hit it from the side and it turned into a soggy soda can folding up like a cheap lawn chair in a windstorm. No fancy reinforcements, no side impact magic, just a door that crumpled like paper and left anyone inside hoping crash test dummies had a better shot, just falling off a picnic table. And if getting squeezed wasn't enough, the Zephyr had a fiery personality too. Cheap wiring rubbed against sharp metal, sparking fires like an angry toaster. One owner even said the headlight switch melted right into the dash while cruising down the freeway. Talk about a hot ride? Literally. 5. The 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air, the chrome guillotine. The 57 Bel Air looked like it rolled straight out of a sci-fi dream with its soaring fins, shiny gold trim, and rocket age style that screamed American dream. But don't let the glamour fool you. This beauty earned a much darker nickname, the chrome guillotine. Its dashboard was a solid steel beast, more like a battering ram than something designed to save you. Crash head first, and you weren't just stopping, you were taking a face-shattering, tooth-smashing hit straight from a metal slab. Then there were the sharp chrome edges everywhere, turning the cabin into a trap of deadly knives if things went south. And that steering column? It was basically a spear aimed right at the driver's chest, ready to turn a crash into an impalement. Seatbelts were optional because apparently, telling people that your car needed them was a marketing no-no back then. 6. The 1974 to 1978 AMC Matador Coupe, the blind spot bomber. The 1974 to 78 AMC Matador Coupe was like the rebellious teenager of cars, bold, weird, and honestly, kind of a mess. Its flying buttress roof looked cool from a distance, with those giant sloping pillars meeting the trunk like a collapsing bridge, but it basically turned the back window into a no-go zone, rear visibility practically a myth. Trying to back up or change lanes felt like playing blind man's bluff with traffic. The doors were hefty but had this terrifying habit of jamming shut in a side impact, trapping people like a bad escape room. And just to spice things up, the brakes were totally untrustworthy, sometimes going soft, other times locking up for no reason. Combine that with poor visibility and weird handling, and you've got yourself a recipe for a what just happened kind of drive. 7. The 1964 to 1966 Ford Thunderbird, the glamorous guillotine. The 1964-66 Ford Thunderbird was the kind of car that screamed luxury and style, all big curves and polished charm, like driving a celebrity on wheels. But beneath that glossy exterior lurked a bit of a beast, and not the fun kind. This rolling tank looked sharp but was about as safe as a house of cards in a hurricane. It didn't have rollover protection, which meant if it tipped over, things could get seriously ugly. Its heavy frame helped on the highway but turned against anyone unlucky enough to roll it. Crash absorption? Practically non-existent. So when you hit something, all that force got passed straight to the poor souls inside. The sleek metal dashboard, while looking fancy, doubled as a potential skull crusher. One owner summed it up perfectly. Beautiful on the outside, deadly on the inside. 8. The 1975 to 1980 Chevrolet Monza, the Firetrap clone. The 1975 to 80 Chevrolet Monza earned the nickname Firetrap clone for all the wrong reasons, and honestly, it's pretty spot on. GM took a car that already had issues, the Vega, and tossed a V8 under the hood like it was some kind of magic fix. It wasn't. That cramped engine bay turned into a sauna, overheating like it was training for a desert marathon. The electrical system was like a ticking time bomb. Over time, wires frayed and insulation melted, especially near the firewall, making the Monza less of a car and more of a rolling toaster oven. One owner joked you could fry an egg on the dashboard, or at least on the wiring harness. And it wasn't just a joke. Fires weren't rare, they were practically part of the package deal, turning everyday drives into an unplanned pyrotechnics show. 9. The 1966 Dodge Polara, the quarter-mile coffin. The 1966 Dodge Polara, nicknamed the 1/4 mile coffin, was muscle car madness on wheels, packing enough punch to thrill any speed junkie. But handling this beast was like trying to tame a wild animal with a bad attitude. The steering was so vague and sluggish, it felt like the car had its own secret plan to throw you off balance whenever you pushed it too hard. And brakes? They barely showed up for work. After a couple of hard stops, the Polara's brakes would fade faster than your motivation on a Monday morning, leaving you praying you'd slow down in time. The real nightmare was its love for fishtailing. 1 minute you're cruising, the next you're wrestling a dragon that wants to spin you out and send you flying. Driving this car wasn't just a thrill, it was a full-on battle for survival. 10. The 1971 to 1974 Ford Pinto, the exploding compact. The Ford Pinto. No death trap list is complete without it. Meant to be a fuel-efficient compact, it turned deadly thanks to a gas tank placed dangerously close to the rear bumper. Even a small rear-end crash could trigger a fiery explosion. The worst part? Ford knew. But instead of fixing the flaw, they crunched the numbers and decided it was cheaper to pay lawsuits than spend $11 per car to make it safer. Chilling, right? 11. The 1959 Chevrolet Impala, the flying coffin. The 1959 Chevy Impala might look like a collector's dream with those iconic tail fins, but back in the day, it was more nightmare than classic. Nicknamed the Flying Coffin, this beauty had a flimsy frame and some of the worst crash safety of its time. In a front-end collision, the car crumpled easily, often sending the steering column straight toward the driver like a spear. Side crashes? No better. Doors had no real reinforcement, turning impacts into metal-shredding disasters. And thanks to its long body and poor handling, dodging danger wasn't really an option either. 12. The 1983 to 1987 Chevrolet Camaro, the Crashmaro. The third-generation Chevy Camaro might have looked fast and fierce, but its safety record was downright terrifying. Affectionately nicknamed the Crashmaro by some unlucky owners and mechanics, this muscle car came with a host of structural weaknesses. The body was built with lightweight materials to improve fuel economy and speed, but at the cost of any real crash protection. The doors were flimsy, the front crumple zones were barely functional, and during hard collisions, the frame often buckled in unpredictable and unsafe ways. The steering wheel column could easily collapse inward, and the interior wasn't much better, filled with hard plastic edges and poorly secured parts that could go flying during an impact. Oh, and don't forget the weak rear axle, which was notorious for snapping under stress and causing the car to veer off course even during normal driving. If you found this dive into deadly cars eye-opening, hit like and subscribe for more wild stories from the world of cars and tech. Got a classic car that scares or impresses you? Drop it in the comments, and remember, buckle up every time. Safety took decades to earn, and it could save your life. Stay curious, stay safe, and see you in the next video.